Affairs don't begin in the bedroom. They begin in childhood. In the part of you that buried her truth just to be loved. The part that's now screaming to be seen. I'm Alex Croxford, and this is the Deeper Love Podcast, where we name the shame, face the guilt, and help you find your way back to yourself. So let's begin. So I got a message from someone on Instagram recently, and she was horrified because her last two relationships ended in her cheating, and it completely shocked her as she didn't think she was capable of doing it again. And she said what she's noticed is she let her relationships get to a point where she's so unhappy that she acts out instead of admitting she should have left a long time ago. Now, that literally could have been a message from me, because that is almost exactly what has happened in all of my relationships. And I'll be honest with you, I was shocked when I actually looked back at all of my previous relationships and I realized I'd cheated on every single one. And even as I say that out loud, I can feel like my face squinting and clenching up, because that feels like quite a scary and shameful thing to admit out loud. But it's the truth. And I have had to really look at myself and that pattern. And that is honestly why I have taken such a deep dive into the root of affairs, because although none of them I could ever really call them a full-blown affair, I did look outside of my relationship every single time, whether or not that was a snog or an inappropriate message or something a little bit more than a snog. Like, none of it is how I would like to behave in relationships. You know, the devastation that it causes, the pain that it causes. And, you know, people often say on my Instagram, oh, you know, you don't know what it's like to be cheated on. And the joke is that I actually do. Like, I was really profoundly, seriously cheated on by my partner before my husband. I mean, that was just an absolute mess anyway, but he was cheating on his current girlfriend to be with me, and then they broke up because they found out about us, and then we were together for 4 years and he spent 4 years sleeping with his ex, and I found out right at the end. So, you know, I've been through that experience. I understand the pain, and after that happened to me, I swore blind I would never do that again. I would never cheat on somebody. How could he possibly do this for me? How could he possibly hurt me like this? I mean, bearing in mind, I definitely snogged someone behind his back at some point. But I was so fixated on what he had done to me and how could he do this? And I don't understand why or how anyone could do this to somebody else. Can't they just be honest? And as I went into my next relationship, which ended up being my husband, I was just horrified at the idea that I would, or anybody could ever do that. And I would never be the one to do it to anybody else. This time, this time he's not going to cheat on me. I'm not going to cheat on him. And the thing is, that's why it was almost extra horrifying when I did it, because I was like, shit. You know, I came into this as the hurt woman that had been cheated on, and now I've just done it to somebody that I love. And when I looked back, or when I was forced to look back at all of my relationships and see that this was a pattern for me, to look outside of my relationship, like, what was it that kept me doing this even though I swore I wouldn't? And now I can see, obviously at the time I was completely oblivious, but now I can see very, very clearly that there was no emotional intimacy in any of my relationships. So what I mean by emotional intimacy, the word intimacy is into me you see. So intimacy is not just sex, it's not just physical intimacy. Intimacy is letting someone see you beneath the mask that you are presenting them with. And so when we walk around with this mask of, I'm the good girl, I'm the perfectionist, I don't need anyone, I'm a strong, independent woman, I don't have emotions, I've got this, I'm holding everybody, we are not, first of all, letting ourselves see the truth of what's going on underneath the mask. But second of all, we're not letting anybody else see it. And I know how that feels in a relationship. It feels like they don't see me, they can't see me, I'm all on my own. And yet I know, both from myself and from so many of my clients, is that being seen is terrifying. Like absolutely terrifying. And that drip of emotional disconnection that like reverberates around our relationships eventually gets to a point of an explosion of infidelity. It might come out in other ways, in other relationships, but for me, this was my outlet. This was the way it poured out. There was so little truth being spoken from myself and from each one of my partners that it's unsurprising that this is where it ended up. Because truth would be to say, I feel like, or I am experiencing a feeling of sadness because I feel like we're not connected, or I'm experiencing a feeling of fear because I feel like we're not spending enough time together. And I really want us to be able to reconnect, or quite honestly, not abandoning myself over and over again when I see my ex before my husband, for example, constantly going back to spend, the night with his, we're going to cut that. So I was that person that would stay because I was almost so determined not to leave, even though I felt deeply disconnected in so many of my relationships. Was I aware that it was disconnection? No, I could not have put my finger on it back then, but it felt like we were just very separate. In every single one of my relationships, I felt like we were two islands, like coexisting. And even though I lived with all three of them as well, we were just coexisting in what looked like a relationship, but wasn't truly connected. And the thing is that there was this part of me that wanted to prove to everybody that I could do relationships right, that I knew what I was doing, that I didn't need to leave, that this wasn't a disaster. I didn't want to admit how bad it was, especially with this boyfriend I'm talking about, less so with my husband, but that boyfriend, I had so many friends, my sister, people worried about this relationship. And I was just determined to keep going. I almost self-sabotaged myself by pursuing a relationship that was an absolute disaster. I remember buying books like Women Are From Mars, Men Are From Venus, or no, sorry, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, because I was trying to understand, like, why was this relationship so hard? Why could we not communicate? Why was he not hearing me? Why was I not able to say what I really wanted to say to him? Why did it feel like we were two completely separate people? And now I look back and I can see it's because I was abandoning myself. Like, I abandoned myself over and over again. Like, I knew deep down that there was some funny business going on with him and his ex-girlfriend and him and some other people from work. But I shoved it down. I shoved it down. I shoved it down. I didn't really speak my truth. And then, of course, what's going to happen? I'm going to kiss somebody else. And then it was the same in my marriage, where I did not speak up about how lonely I felt and how much more I needed, and how, you know, his life and what was happening in his life, his studies, his work, his overtime all the time, like working on the side of London, me not ever seeing him, us having very different lives, was not how I wanted to be in a marriage. But I completely crushed and squashed how I felt because he was the one that was going through the difficult time with his studies. And at the same time, I was going through the infertility, IVF, etc., etc. But I just squashed it down, squashed it down, squashed it down to prioritize him and what he was going through. And now I look back and I'm like, I can't believe I swallowed that for so long. But it was almost this part of me that really wanted him to suddenly show me how much I mattered. Because deep down, I didn't feel like I mattered at all. And I was addicted to being in a relationship that, you know, that felt like I had to chase love, that felt like I had to be more perfect to be loved. Even though he never said those words, it was all unspoken. But this is why eventually I believe that women cheat, because they do not have the capacity or the trust in themselves, or they've never been given permission to speak what is true for fear of being too much, or for fear of getting it wrong, or for fear of being laughed at. And oh my God, I didn't even know what a need was. I didn't even know I could have needs. So to the thought of asking for something, or the thought of asking for something to be met, or needing X or Y or Z, was just wild to me until I started to do this work and started to unpack how my hyper independence was actually creating almost like a brick wall between me and my then partners. And I really believe that when we cheat, however that looks, whether that looks like a kiss or a text message or a full-blown affair, it is a part of you that is acting out, that is actually trying to wake you up. And I can see it so many times in my marriage where there were moments of me, you know, there being like a flirtation and me not listening to that, me just pushing it away again, thinking nothing of it. And it's like, why am I being pulled out of my primary relationship? What's happening? And when I say, why am I being pulled out? Why am I pulling myself out? No one's doing it to me. This was me. Well, this was the pattern. But what I actually can see now, and this is why it doesn't work to just say, oh, I'd never do that again. I could never do that again. Because it's deeper than that. This isn't a conscious decision you made to cheat on your partner. If it was, you wouldn't have done it. It's like smoking. You know, they can put those horrible pictures on those packets. They can tell us over and over again that smoking's killing us and it's ruining fertility and all of these things. But you're speaking to someone's conscious mind with that. Whereas smoking, really, this is a symptom, or this is a solution, I should say, for soothing your central nervous system. This is a coping mechanism to try and soothe the central nervous system that is absolutely wired. So your central nervous system doesn't speak the same language as your mind, as your conscious mind. And it's exactly the same in affairs. And I want to say again, and I always want to reiterate this, I am not making excuses for cheating. I am never doing that. What I'm offering is a deeper understanding of how you got to where you got. And on top of that, a roadmap to heal from the root that led you to this pattern, this painful, I don't even want to call it a mistake, this painful incident in your life. And when we do cheat, I honestly believe that this is a part of us that's trying to wake us up. Like, wake up. Stop abandoning yourself. Stop saying yes when you mean no. Stop having no boundaries. Stop ignoring how you feel. Stop suppressing the truth to keep yourself more acceptable or more loved or more perfect. You don't need to be a version of you that's so neatly put together and so accommodating and so kind and so loving and so generous and never says something out of place or something wrong. And this doesn't excuse bad behavior. It just allows us to be more real. And that part of us that wants to be more real, that wants to be more authentic, that wants to be seen in the truth, is currently terrified that if she is seen, she's going to be rejected, that she is going to be rejected for the truth of who she is, which is so much worse than being rejected for the performance or for the mask. But eventually, that part is not going to just sit around waiting for you to wake up, because there is a part that believes that you might actually die. If you keep suppressing this much, if you keep holding so much in, if you keep not being true, that feels like death to your central nervous system, because you've gone. You've been lost. Where are you? And that long-term suppression will eventually lead to an explosion, to a rupture. And that acting out is as a pressure release, not a character flaw. Regardless of what society tells us, regardless of what religion tells us, regardless of what many, many men on Instagram tell me, and women actually, you are not a bad person. This is not a moral failure. And I know how hard that is to accept when you truly believe that you are bad at your core and that you have done something that is so abhorrent you could never forgive yourself. And trust me, I was where you are. I have been there, but I have also processed all of the shame that I carried around that. That's why I'm able to stand on social media and make a podcast about this, because I don't carry any shame around it anymore, because I've really done this healing work. I have really got to the root of the pain that I carried, the belief that I was a bad person. And the only way that I was going to be loved is if I was this image perfect, polite, kind version of me who got shit done, right? And there was no room for my mess. There was no room for my mess. And this work doesn't, it's not easy. I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, I just told myself to stop feeling so bad and don't feel guilty. Like, this guilt and shame and fear is locked in to our systems. This has been hanging around for decades. This isn't even just about the affair. So there's no quick fix to it. And there is no 6-week course that I can give you to try to alleviate the shame and the guilt and to move on from the affair. That is not how it works. This is a process. And if you're still with the partner who you cheated on, that is a process too. It's not to say that you can't come through the other side. Sometimes, and I have seen it, that this can be an incredibly powerful moment for both parties, because it's such an awakener. You can't hide from the pain. There is no hiding from the pain of betrayal. And if you are hiding from the pain of betrayal, then you are numb. Then that's another alarm bell that's going off. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's an alarm bell. The numbness or the disconnection or the disassociation that you're experiencing, if you're not experiencing guilt or shame or fear, is another signal that your body doesn't know what to do with what's happened. And so this is why we must, I believe, if this is going to be your turning point in life, if you want to use this moment to rise like a phoenix, or like the phoenix, I should say, and come out the other side and be like, holy shit, I can see why that had to happen. Because I was asleep. I was sleeping on my own life. I was abandoning myself over and over again to make sure that everybody else was okay, and I was at the bottom of the pile. That can only go on for so long before something explodes. before there is an implosion both inside of yourself and the marriage, and it spills out sideways. And the one thing that I am so I mean, I'm so grateful for now is my ability to be able to share with my current partner Adam how I'm truly feeling. And the one thing I will say is that he has created safety for me to do that. And not every man can, not every woman can either. I want to say this is not about men and women, this is just about humans. But I do not rely on him for me to be able to feel safe enough in myself to share how I truly feel. Because you can go round and round and round and round and round hunting for a man who's going to make you feel safe enough to share how you really feel. But if you don't feel safe enough in yourself, and you can look back at all your previous relationships, you can look back at all your boyfriends or people that you've been dating if you haven't been in serious relationships, and look, did I feel safe to speak how I truly feel? Did I feel confident to be able to speak up when I was feeling sad or lonely or afraid or angry? Because if you didn't, that's not just going to be about them. They are going to be a mirror to your own fear of speaking up. And when you have healed that fear, and I mean like from the root in your body, healed that fear, you are not going to even entertain the idea of being in a relationship with somebody who isn't able to hold you in your emotions and in your truth. And that doesn't mean that it's easy, by the way. Like, I didn't just swan into this relationship and I was like, oh my God, now I can just speak my truth. Like, it doesn't happen that easily. And to be honest, I had to trip over and I had to fall and I had to try things out and I had to test the water. I had to be brave enough to test the water without knowing if he was going to be able to hold it or not. It wasn't like he was able to demonstrate to me that if I shared how I truly felt, he was going to be able to hold it. He could have told me that, but we don't know if it's true until we do it. So we have to feel safe enough in ourselves to be able to do that before, ideally, we're in a relationship, but also you can do it while you're in a relationship. Transformation is possible in relationship. And the one thing from that, from the belief or the knowledge that I can share my truth with Adam, is that if we did get to a place in our relationship where I felt that this is no longer serving me, and I hate to say this out loud because I really don't ever want to break up with him, but we never know, right? We never know what's going to happen. But my absolute conviction or my absolute belief now is that I will leave this early in truth, not leave it for years and then have to leave in chaos. Like, I honor myself and I honor him enough to choose to be honest rather than another nuclear bomb have to go off in a really loving relationship that matters a lot to me. And, you know, there is no shame, and I want to be really clear about this. There is no shame in repeating a pattern. If I could tell you all of the patterns that I had to repeat until I finally got the message, holy mother of God. Like, it's embarrassing. It's not embarrassing, actually, but it's wild. Sometimes it takes us quite a few times before we're going to wake up and we're going to see the pattern and we're going to be able to know that we want to heal it. But when the pattern becomes visible, then that is a sign that it's time to start facing the root of it. Like, what has led me here? What is still stored in my central nervous system that I need to heal, that I need to integrate, that I need to love? We're so busy trying to fix ourselves or get rid of a part of ourselves or move on from the version of ourselves that did something that we regret or that we have shame about. It's actually the opposite that we need to do. we need to be able to love the part of us that set the alarm off. Like, what are you doing? And I honestly have so much forgiveness now for the version of me that did that. She was lost. And I remember when I did ayahuasca in 2022, I went to the Peruvian jungle and sat with the Shipibo tribe, and we drank ayahuasca, the medicine, 4 times over 8 days. And I remember I went in, and this was just over a year after my marriage had finally ended. And I went in with the intention to open my heart. That was my intention for every single retreat I went on, healer I saw, any kind of coaching or mentoring. For a year, I just wanted to open my heart because I could see how closed my heart was. And I remember it must have been the second medicine, the second night that we'd drunk. And I got this message that was your ex-husband. So he'd forgiven you. He'd already forgiven you. But the only way for you to heal your heart is, or open your heart, is for you to forgive yourself. And so I got this very clear image of me as I was at that time in 2022, hugging the version of me 5-6 years previous who had cheated. And I remember feeling her in my arms, and this very sad and lost and skinny woman who didn't know who she was. She didn't know what she wanted. She felt so alone, and she was so sad. And as I hugged her and I felt her, and I felt her energy, and I felt her confusion, and I felt her sadness, I just felt so much forgiveness for that version of me. And even though I would take back the pain that I caused myself and my ex-husband a million times over, I would not take back the journey that I have been on to connect to myself and to open my heart and to feel what is true and to know myself and to be able to create an entirely new life from, at one point, the ashes. So an affair, cheating, betrayal, it's not about being weak or being reckless or not having strong enough willpower or being a bad person or being broken. It's about what happens when we don't feel like we're allowed to voice our needs or ask for more or say, I'm not okay, until we're already halfway out the door. And so if you've ever found yourself wondering why you didn't leave sooner or why you acted out instead of speaking up, you're not alone. There are so many women asking the same question. But I want to talk about what's really underneath that pattern and how we begin healing it from the root. Because that is where change happens. That is where you get to come from an entirely different space. You become the woman that you were born to be, not the one that you thought you had to be in order to be loved. And so if you're listening to this and you are nodding along and saying, oh my God, yes, Alex, yes, yes, then I have a really exciting new free masterclass coming up this Thursday, the 18th of September, called Breaking the Cycle of Shame. It's at 8 p.m. PST. I'm going to put the link in the show notes, so please click there to sign up, and I can't wait to see you there. Thank you for listening to the Deeper Love podcast. If today's episode spoke to you, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you're ready to go deeper, you'll find all the ways to work with me in the show notes. Until next time.